hardly ever drink. But when I drink, like I like drinking, like, or food. It's like there's sometimes I do it, but there's a point to it. And to me, that's the cost. What's the cost of doing this?
One of my good he went through a rehab 12-step program and stopped drinking. And he said food tastes better. Like everything, like all of a sudden things excite me that didn't before.
Because I truly believe that any two people can make magic at all, no matter what's happened, where you're at, as long as both people are willing to look at themselves first and take radical accountability for the role that they play, and then come together, to make agreements and to meet each other's needs, magic can happen. Welcome to the Burnout Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Nugent. I'm stoked for today. My guest today is Brandon West. Brandon and I just met each other, 2 or 3 weeks ago at a networking event, called the Innovators Table. Dalton Locke, that has been on our podcast, met there and just hit it off. He and I got together and found a lot of similarities in life. And both of us, went through a divorce and that whole scene. And now he's recently married. He's had tremendous business success in his career as an entrepreneur. And we're just going to talk about life. And, one of the big things that where we really connect in is, we as men many times put on a mask and we think we need to show up a certain way or how we present ourselves to public, if you will. And there's lots of validation that we get from other people, whether it's from, the money that we've made or relationships or who we're dating, and then there's a process that we go through, which you and I have both done is really coming into our authentic selves. Dude, I'm stoked for this. So Brandon, thanks for being here today, man.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Let's dig into that. I mean, before we started recording, we were talking about kind of the journey of like getting to being authentic or authentic. So what does that mean to you?
So I think authenticity is something that it is the core of who we are. And when you think of even from our childhood, we're born as these good little kids, raised as good little kids. We go through a little trauma, but deep down, I think as we keep focusing back on like the core of who we are, that's where our authenticity comes out and it shows itself in moments of happiness and moments of stress and moments of anxiety in all different areas. And I think that as we tap into it more and find out who we really are, I think it really helps us get through those hard times that we're going to face or we already have faced.
Yeah. So I love that you said like the good times and also the stressful times, right? Because a lot of times like we're trying to keep our shit together, whatever, right? And then all of a sudden we're stressed out, we show up differently, or we have, they can't see this side of me or that side of me. Yeah. Authenticity is a real big, it's one of my core values today, in my own journey and personal transformation and all the things I've gone through. You don't know it sometimes till after the fact. And then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't even being real. Yeah. Like I was playing a role. I was trying to show up to placate this person to like me or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talked earlier too, just about putting on masks or playing a character, that plays a huge role in all of us. I've done it myself during my married years. I was a father, I was a husband, and I played that role. During my work life, I was in sales, the business guy, and then it transitions, I think, a lot. So you go through a divorce and then you try and figure out who you are, again, the character of who you are. And you go through that phase. And then for myself, who just recently got married, I put on a different character. And I think as we do that, but finding out, like knowing our authentic self, going back to authenticity, it's really important because I think that character is buried deep within us, just like I said as a kid. And I think that during those times we're wearing those masks, I think if we subconsciously or consciously think that you're doing that and it's just a phase, then you can still stay authentic to yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And for me, like, I think this might be an example I've shared on this podcast or on social, but, maybe I was even aware of it. Like, for example, like, in my investment firm that I had, we'd have clients that would come in and all sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
So you'd have diehard Republicans, diehard Democrat. Yep. And I love to poke the bear a little bit, right? So my clients that were way to the right, I'd poke them a little bit. Yeah. But then I wouldn't necessarily completely speak my truth of like how I truly feel. Or someone that was way to the left, I'd poke the bear, have some fun with it, but like I would never actually truly stay because my concern was, I'm like, well, I don't want them to not like me. I want to be able to connect with them. And the only way that they're going to be able to connect with me is if I see things their way.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because I watched a video and this lady was talking about labeling ourselves. And there was a church leader who came out and said the best way to label yourself, he said, is to label yourself as a follower of Christ or a follower of whatever it is you follow, spirituality or whatever it might be, because that's consistent. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket of saying, I am a follower of this political leader or this person, you might not agree with everything they say. So it varies and it changes. Because just like you said, you could be all on one side or all on the other, but then some stuff comes out and you're like, I don't like all of that.
Which I'd never have been.
Right,
You know,
right.
and you'd have these people that were just, you know, I mean, even in political, I mean, I'll you know, the people that are, you know, the MAGA, the Trump movement, it's like, you know, it's everything he says. And it's like, you can't, everything, you
Right,
know,
exactly.
or people way to the left, like everything, like you truly believe all of this stuff. And it's
Yeah.
like, versus like, no, I take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You know, I've always been drawn to people that can speak their truth and bold and sometimes polarizing,
Yeah.
you know, and because I realized that that was something that, yes, I mean, when I was strong in an opinion, I would speak it,
Yeah.
but sometimes hold back,
Yeah.
again, worried what people were going to think of me. And what's interesting that this whole idea is that my worth is attached to other people's opinions, the outside validation. And I'm also really good, again, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I can see somebody and respect the fact that they're speaking their truth or showing up as their authentic self.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily agree with what they're saying. You know, I'm really good at kind of like, I see this in you, and also like, I don't agree with anything you're saying, but I respect the fact that you're staying in your power, even though that, you know, there are going to be people that disagree with you, or, and to me, part of authenticity is knowing that not everybody's going to like you.
Yeah. I want to share a story about that. I grew up in Wisconsin. It's a cool town called Lake Geneva. And I received validation from my sports. So I broke some track records. I was a cool kid on campus type thing. And during that process, I was getting validation from across the board like this, right? And you're in a small town, so you feel like we're all so cool, and we're all still super close with that whole group of the class of 93. Played a little college football, and I remember as I was up there in college, we were partying it up, and I looked in the mirror. It was one night in the dorm rooms, and I'm like, what are you doing? And my authentic self was like, this isn't you. Like, what are you going to do? Just go get a degree, go live your life, go do this stuff. And my dad lived out in Utah. The next morning, I went down. I was in my room, and a girl came down that I was talking to and stuff. And she, and I told her, I said, hey, I think I'm going to move to Utah to go be with my dad. And really, it was like, I wanted to connect myself with something bigger than just the finger pointing, like validation. And she's like, you can't, there's a bunch of Mormons in Utah and all these things, right? And we grew up as members of the church, but didn't really go that much. And so, and it wasn't even about church. It was just about me being authentic to who I am. And I told her, I said, I'll flip a quarter. Heads I stayed, tails I go. Boom, it was tails, and I find 2 out of 3. And she was like, and it was tails again. And she goes, you can't put your life in a quarter. And I go, true. I go, I'll leave it to God. And I swear if it was a movie, it would have been like slow motion going up. And it came down. I dropped it on the table, didn't look at it. And I go, I swear to you, I'm going to do whatever this thing says. And for me, it was like a prayer to God. It's like, get me out of here. Please get me out of here. Because I didn't feel authentic to who I was. I was being a sheep. And I was just following the herd. And I lifted my hand off the desk. And she looked down and ran out the door. And I got on the phone, called my dad. Dad, I'm moving to Utah, May 20th. School's done May 19th. I called my mom. I called all my friends because I didn't want to look like an idiot for not following through with it.
Yeah.
And I just thought the more people I could tell. And I moved out here. And all of a sudden, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a single person. No one knew me. And I started doing scripture roulette. And I just find scripture to kind of apply it to me. And for me, it was my connection to getting validation above instead of across. And all of a sudden I started tapping into who I am. And so I go through, and if you don't mind me sharing this too, is I go through, and a year later, I was 21 years old, done with 3 years of college. And again, just really within myself, right? And I decided to go on a mission. And I went in and told the bishop, I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I remember I went back and told my dad, and he goes, well, if you're going to regret it when you're my age and your kids are off, want to go on missions or don't want to go on missions, they're like, well, you didn't go. I'm like, shoot, I better. He goes, if you're going to regret it then, you should go now. And so I did. I went to San Diego Spanish speaking. It was awesome. Came back, got married to a return missionary, awesome woman, and went through all of that. 2016, I moved out and filed a divorce, and I didn't even take my pillow. I just took my clothes, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in this little apartment by myself. And again, back in that same spot I was in 1995, moving out to Utah by myself, I'm like, shoot, who am I? No one knows me as a single guy. No one knows me as this anymore. And a year later, the divorce still wasn't finalized. It took 2 years. And they called me in and excommunicated me. I've never publicly said that. But during that moment, because I've sat in the high council on the other side of the table, and during that moment, I really tapped into my authentic self. And while he was reading to me, like what's going to happen, I was literally praying because I felt darkness at first, like fired up inside of me, like I was mad. I just thought of all the mission and all the things I've done and all the tithing and all the service. And I wanted to get mad. And I had this feeling come over me to be better, not bitter. And so I tied my spirituality and growth and everything I've gone through to the gospel more than the organization. And it tapped in, and for me that worked. And so I've been able to keep that spiritual connection, which helps me with my authentic self, and then my validation coming from above instead of worrying about this and playing those characters and playing those roles that we talked about. Because I think when we do that, we put on these labels or characters, you can fall fast. And I think all of us have, right?
Yeah. Well, I know that's big to share, so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. Also, it's interesting too, because like so much of like, I as well grew up in the Mormon church, left, I don't know, 9-10 years ago, just before I went through my divorce, and, so much of our identities tied to this and different different beliefs and then all of a sudden these life events come, neither one of us truly had, other than one guy I know, which is so funny. I was at his wedding and he literally, before he got married, he's like, I've signed, he was literally bragging about the prenup that he had signed. Like, and I'm like, why is he talking about like this marriage is going to end just before he got married? But most people don't get married thinking they're going to get divorced. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, so you get there, you go through that. It's the painful, it's our identity, and, when you were saying that, you're sitting in this apartment by yourself, I remember, I moved out, went to my parents' house. I'm in my parents' basement. I'm 40 years old, living in my parents', and I'm like, oh my, I've hit rock bottom. And then it's funny too, because then I ended up I'm like, I got to get out of here. I went and got it. I went and got my place. And I remember my oldest son told me a long time later. It's like, he's like, yeah, I came over and I saw you sitting. I hadn't had the house furnished yet. I'm sitting in this chair watching TV. At the time, I'm really overweight, eating this food. And he's like, I remember looking at you like, I felt so sorry for you. Oh, wow. It's just this lonely, like, this place to be, and again, like even with burn up or my life, or just like, I truly believe that like we have these horrific, painful moments, divorce, heartache, business failure, whatever it happens to be. And the reality is we have a choice of what we do with it. And, I look back on my divorce, as painful it is, and I would not wish divorce on my worst enemy. We both did the best that we could. We got married really young, married 17 years. And I look back for me and for my kids, like there's, in many ways, it was one of the greatest things that could have happened to our family, to my kids, to me, even though it doesn't look like it's quote unquote supposed to look. Yeah. And yet the pain is the activator. There needs to be a rupture there. And it's these ruptures that happen in life, and I think about, and I actually respect you as an athlete, coming to the decision yourself that, hey, this is a facade in some ways. It's not who I am, or feel called to to something else. Because I know a lot of people that have been collegiate or even professional athletes. I mean, it's like, yeah, you're the man. No, I'm the athlete. And then all of a sudden it gets taken away from you. And then like, who are you? Like your identity is tied to that. And I've had this whole thing, I've been pretty aware of this with my kids. I call it actually kind of out where you live. When I lived out in South Jordan, I'm like, here in Utah, like there was a lot of Al Bundys out there, meaning they were living vicariously through their kids. Yeah. And I'm watching these kids that it's like, this sport, then to this comp team, and then this, it's just 24/7. And my thing with my kids is like, listen, I will support you if you want to play, but like, I'd rather you be more round, like a good at wake surfing, a wakeboarding, and have all these things, because the likelihood of you becoming a professional athlete is so small. And if you want to go for it, I will support you.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many people I've seen that get to college and their whole thing, and then all of a sudden they get an injury or something happens. And so, you had that moment, which was painful, but yet you wouldn't be here without that moment. And it's like, there's just so much beauty, not when we're there, but like the pain, the rupture, the disruption, the identity, it gives us opportunities, but we get to choose what we do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that success, if you look back at your life and think, what have I been successful in? Whether it's even being a good friend, like being a good athlete, or being a good son or daughter. My son, Luke, he's doing awesome in basketball, and we just went down and did a college campus tour, and I had him shooting 100 free throws. I'm like, just shoot 100 free throws. And no one else was in the gym, and it was, and then it bounced, so I go boom, and I bounce it to him, and he bounced once and shoot. It goes boom, 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 boom. And during the whole time, he got to like 70, and he's like, "Are you counting?" I'm like, "Shh," and he just keeps going. He ended up going 100 for 105.
Wow.
So it was crazy. I don't care about the shots made. What I cared about was watching him focus.
Yeah.
And just getting in his rhythm and in the zone and shutting out the noise. And which is pretty cool, is like when you look at like famous athletes, and we've talked before about my experience with like the Michael Jordan effect. Take any athlete there, and they're like in a stadium full of 20,000 people. They're not on their phones. Like, the athletes aren't on their phones. They're not distracted from the things of the world. They hear one voice out of 20,000 people telling them, "Hey, do this, do this, do this, do this," or "Be careful with this," right? And giving them advice the whole time. And they are able to shut it out and hyper focus. And for me, with my son, that's what I wanted. And the biggest thing too, like, so when my oldest, because my kids are all athletes, my daughter's probably the biggest athlete. My boys and I were downstairs talking about basketball and doing other stuff, and my daughter comes down with her state championship rings, and she's like, "Do you guys have any of these? Do you want to borrow some?"
I
like,
love it.
Gosh dang it. But I remember my oldest, when he tried out for basketball, there was 88 kids that tried out, and they took 6. Well, 82 kids are walking away like, what the heck? And Thurl Bailey from the Jazz, and I started a basketball club program, because I thought, these kids who are identifying themselves, going back to my validation, going like this, that's who they knew they were, and that they're not even making the high school team. So then I'm like, gosh, how can we gain confidence in kids doing something they love? And that was the whole goal. That's what I'm trying to do, like with my kids and with people I work with, is how can we gain confidence in ourselves doing something we love? And the only way we know what we love is when we tap into that authentic self, going back full fold. And I think that's the journey, is finding out, who are we really? From you sitting on the couch, like, it just triggers something to me, as I'm like, what snapped you out of sitting on the couch at 40 years old in your parents' basement? And, they're saying, "I felt sorry for you." What was it inside of you that all of a sudden snapped you out of it?
Well, I think he was just, at the time I weighed 350 pounds, and I talk about this a lot. It wasn't necessarily that same night, but it was in that same, call it within a 2 or 3 week period, where food was my drug, eating was the addiction for most of my life. And I'm sitting there, and my ex-wife called me and, tore into me. I don't remember what she said. We're great friends now, but nevertheless, like, I went into a trance. Like, I just started eating to numb the pain.
Yeah.
And then I DoorDashed even more food, because I couldn't find anything else. And just gorged myself to the point of literally physical pain.
Yeah.
And I sat there in it was a chair, a couch chair, whatever. And I just started sobbing. And it was in that, and that was such a painful moment, such a rock bottom moment in my physical health. But it was in that moment that the pain of my current situation exceeded the pain of change. And I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm done. And literally, everything switched. The next 12 months, I lost 70 pounds, now I'm down, close to 130. And so, but it's been a journey. Yeah. But it was that painful moment, and pain, it can be an activator. And for men, many times, like, unfortunately, things have to get really bad. When I first got into this business and working with men, one of my intentions was like, I want to help people not go to where, avoid it. I don't want them to feel the pain. And it was, the intention was good.
Yeah.
And then as I've stepped more into it and then looking at my own life, no, actually my job is to hold you by the arm and take you into the pain. You can't avoid it. And what happens is we avoid it and then we get into an addictive cycle, whatever. You can't avoid the work that's there. And so addictions and things kick in. And so it's like, yeah, I hope no one gets to the lows that I went to. But if you don't address certain things, like you're going to go there. And so it's like, well, let's go there quicker. Let's face it. Let's own our shit. Let's tell the truth, take accountability, change the stories, whatever happens to be. But like the light that we're all searching for is actually found or triggered in the dark.
I'm glad you said that. Just like when I first met you, and I'm like, I did not come here to talk about this, but I'm going to do it. I want to talk about addiction for a second.
Please.
And so a lot of that is, like you said, you were numbing it. And when you look back, everyone thinks of addicts as people that are shooting up or drinking like beyond belief.
Everyone is an addict. Let's just
Yes.
put everyone
Thank
has
you.
an addiction. Every person on this planet.
Yeah, and what we're doing is just numbing what we should be facing, essentially. And my little brother, he was doing some drugs, and he was numbing, because I could go through the whole story of him, but he was numbing a lot of stuff that he went through, and a lot of shame and guilt. And one day the drug did not do him good, and it was fentanyl laced, and he died. And during that moment, I didn't know how to deal with death. And it was weird, because here I was single, and I watched everyone be comforted by their spouses or friends or whatever it is. And I'm sitting here like, what am I doing? And I started numbing my pain because I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I look back at that moment and I'm like, now I'm prepared mentally and emotionally and subconsciously, I know now better, like how to handle that kind of stuff, because I found myself diving into that stuff too, of just numbing my pain. And it got to the point where I realized, I'm like, I got to freaking fix this. I got to take care of it. And I did. I took steps that I needed to do to pull myself out of it. And I'm so grateful I did. So for me, I've been free of all substances and all things since February, which is cool.
It's good. It's powerful.
But doing that, the brain fog is gone. My clarity is so much stronger than ever before. But more importantly, it's not about the substance again. It's the fact that I wasn't facing the things I should be facing. And the joy and the confidence I've gained back within myself is it reminds me back now where I was when I moved out here to Utah at 20 years old. It's me figuring that out and choosing to be in a healthy relationship to the point where I got married, and which is another great topic, to the transition from divorce to single to married. But back to the addiction thing, it is something that I think a lot of us are just numbing a lot of the things we should be facing.
And I'd have different modalities. I have a very addictive personality. I'm either all in or all out. And yeah, I mean, not only that, and then to get different modalities. And when I went through the pain of losing my business, like I was numbing out on whatever I could find, just because it was so painful, and the truth is I prolonged the pain,
What do you mean by that?
Well, addiction's rooted in avoidance.
Yeah.
So I was avoiding having hard conversations. Most of it really was avoiding accepting what was happening.
Okay.
It was the truth of what was happening. I couldn't do anything. Like I believe most of the pain and suffering that we feel is not able to accept what is. So for example, like, and again, I appreciate sharing with your brother, and, your brother passing away. It's like, he's passed away. And of course you have the feelings to be able to, you can't change that. You can't do it. And so it's the realization. So all these things come up, and it's like, it's part of it's like not accepting what just happened.
Yeah.
And not to say that it would negate your pain. The pain's going to come. It's inevitable. But allowing yourself to feel it versus like trying to suffocate it and push it down. And a lot of times, I think addiction can rear its ugly head. I mean, I'm super passionate and open about my own journey with this, because I've seen it in my own life, and I see it in a lot of people, especially in men, and, take porn, for example. Most men turn to porn, men are always turned on 24/7. Well, okay. Yes. But most men turn to porn to regulate their dysregulated nervous system. It's the dopamine hit. It's to not feel. yet the instant relief gives them constant relief, but then the guilt and shame get kicked into it. And then there's this cycle, and then you feed the beast by doing more of it because you don't want to feel it, and whatever the modality happens to be. And so to me, it's rooted in avoidance, and I was avoiding what I couldn't face. And once you finally face it, my tagline is freedom's in the fire. It's like, I don't want to get hot. I mean, no one wants to get burned, but what I found is like, if I can jump into the flames and just like burn off what needs to, just feel it all, I can move through things so much quicker. And so I'm super passionate about it. And again, for most of my life, I've had some sort of modality to like regulate food. That was it. I mean, it's so funny when I had my investment firm years ago, we were on a family trip, and one of those first flash crashes, where the market dropped like 1,000 points.
Oh yeah.
So we were on a plane when this happened. We get off, and I see this on the news, and I'm like, I was pissed because I couldn't take advantage of it. Like, I missed it, and I went like to Cinnabon, and started eating Cinnabon. and then I went back, and then my wife at the time, she goes, you are an emotional eater, and it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like, well, duh, of course I was, but like it was the first time there was awareness to it. I was literally went into a trance because I was so like, I don't know what to do with this. I went to something to try to just like calm it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that too, because I do think that is when people go, oh my gosh, I need a drink, or I got to have a smoke, or whatever. I got to go eat something. And it is just that need for the quick dopamine hit to like centralize your.
Well, I think too, system. It's not that it's necessarily bad. It's also just knowing yourself. Yeah. Like I know my personality. Yeah. And so it's just having discipline around it. And other times that I engage in sure, 100%. If I'm going to, I've been training for this men's physique show that I'm working through. Like I hardly ever drink. Like I don't drink that much, but when I drink, I like drinking, like, or food. Like there's sometimes I do it, but there's a point to it. And to me, that's the cost. What's the cost of doing this? So I'm way more versus, yes. I'm more of like, okay, let me just sit with this. Is this worth it? And I want to make conscious decisions and knowing like, okay, I'm choosing to do this, knowing that there's a consequence on the other side of it, but I'm willing to accept that because I'm ready. I want to do this, versus like when you get into that, it's just like you just go to, it's the default. But pulling it out of that dopamine hit is hard. In replacing that high, if you will, or that dopamine with natural other things to do, like the transition to that is very challenging. And that's why people get so stuck in it because they can't get through it. But you and I are living proof that like as painful as it is, like you can do it. But what's on the other side of it is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of my good friends from like the third grade, he went through a rehab 12-step program and stopped drinking. And he said, I mean, it's been a couple of years now, but he's like, food tastes better. Like everything, like all of a sudden things excite me that didn't before because his dopamine hits were so high with the drinking. Then all of a sudden now it's like things that were so low. And all of a sudden it's like everything else has kind of risen up when he's been free of substances. Yep. And so it goes back to that as like finding out our true selves and taking time. I talked to a good friend of mine yesterday. And he's like, what do you do when you're fired up and mad? I'm like, I just breathe. And it sounds weird, but I go, when you're upset, you got to think the first thing, what am I afraid of? Because your anger, frustration, and jealousy all stem from fear. And people are like, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm tough. I'm cool. No, you're afraid they don't respect you. They're afraid they're not listening to you or they don't understand you. And you start getting frustrated. And when you show your fears through anger, frustration, jealousy, you're going to get what you don't want times 10. So go back to a jealous person. If you have your spouse or girlfriend and they're all dressed up and going to go out with the girls. So you're like, whoa, where are you going to go? How long are you going to be? When are you going to be back? And you start doing this, I love you. I don't want to lose you, which is a negative thing. Lose. And so you start acting the jealous acts, right? The opposite of fear is faith, and it shows itself in confidence, in authenticity, like being real core to who you are. And you're like, I love you. I want to keep you. So no matter what, whether she goes out and you're acting crazy and jealous, or she goes out and you're like, hey, here's some money for you and your girlfriends, have a good time. I'm going to clean up the house and I'll be here when you get back. That's the confidence side, the faith side. No matter what, when she goes out, that guy, a dude like you and I back in the single days, right, for me, like they're going to be there and be like, your man doesn't know what he has. And she's either going to say to the one with the jealous action, you know what, you're right, he doesn't. And then, or the one that has the confident side, it's like, yeah, he does. He's cleaning up the house, put the kids to bed. He's waiting for me.
We could talk about this for hours. I have a whole thing around this. So what's interesting, post divorce, whatever, in a relationship, first I used to feel that way. It's like, jealous, insecure, or whatever it happens to be, and then I started to change the theory and story. It's like, well, if I'm, who I'm dating is attractive, she's very attractive. Like, of course, other men are going to find her attractive, and especially in the single world. And what I've learned too, this is as much on the woman as is the man. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're married, single, in a relationship, dudes are going to hit on you if you're a good looking woman.
Yes.
And so what the woman does with that, that's really on her, for our own peace of mind as men. It's just like knowing that it's like, we have no control. If something happens, then it happens. But like just being confident in like who we are. I mean, to me, it's like, it became more of a vote of confidence for me that it's like, look who's on my arm versus like, oh, don't look at him. Don't wear this. Don't do this. Don't, you know what I mean? It's like, but people are, the whole idea of like, hey, I'm not going to hit on you or this, guys are doing that constantly. And the whole thing, like, oh, they're in a relationship. I've seen way too much. I don't buy that. Doesn't mean anything to me, whether you're single, relationship, especially if you're married. So, oh, they're married. It's like, no way. I've seen way too much leaky energy of where people do this and secret shit. Like, and so again, bringing it back to us as men, it's like, if you're jealous or feeling these particular feelings, there's some insecurities.
Yeah. It's a fear base.
Yeah. And I'm of the belief that, again, because of my own journey in doing this and just the work that I'm in, like if I have a reaction to anything anyone does, anything, it doesn't matter what it's like, that is the signal to me. I've done enough work and I train. It's like, and not always right in the moment, but pretty quickly it's like, okay, there's some work I have to do here. If you say something that where I quote unquote feel offended, if I'm offended by something you said, that has more to do with me than it does you.
Absolutely. And that's what I was saying to him yesterday, to my friend, is the moment that you get triggered, you got to breathe and think, what am I afraid of? And when you can figure it out and be like, maybe I'm just feeling insecure. Maybe I'm afraid they don't respect me. And when you breathe, and then they say to like, let your voice, and this is kind of pretty cool. It's physiological. So your frontal lobe of your brain is decision, logic, and impulse control. And so when you get upset or frustrated, you start talking faster and you start going like this and you start talking in a higher pitch voice. The blood is going like this, fills up your body, and you are pumped. Not thinking straight, saying things you shouldn't say, throwing punches you shouldn't be throwing, doing stupid stuff. But I've told them, I said to go, if you can take a breath, figure out what you're afraid of, and let your voice drop off at the end of every sentence and breathe in between sentences. Just like I'm doing right now. It's a cadence that people can take on. And what it does, it keeps the blood flow going. And all of a sudden you can think straight, logically, emotionally, and keep yourself in check. And so now you can like calmly talk through it and just think about not what am I afraid of, is like, what do I want to accomplish? And you're like, well, I want him to respect me. Well, the way to have that happen is by staying calm. And so it's been cool. It's something I've still constantly practicing and learning.
Yeah, I have.
But it's hard to do. But I think it's good for the audience to
no,
hear
for
that.
sure. I have a program, I call it the burn up reset formula, so that you can reset. So what you just said, like I have a whole like 5-step thing that you can walk yourself through in doing that. But the first step in order to do it, like you just said, is like you have to have awareness.
Yes.
Right? Because if you're I'm literally doing this with my 18-year-old son right now. Like, so one of the cool things I get to do is with my boys, it's like I've got the father hat, but then it's like once a week and we together, I put on the coaching hat. Yeah. It's a very different, it's so fun because if they can learn some of these things at such a young age, like, I mean, they're already off, they're already on different planets, relative to kids their age. But my 18-year-old son, his default, he's very reactive.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Like defending, and he's had older brothers that just like, so I get it. Like being the third, he's got to defend, show up, whatever. So, we had this whole conversation and I'm like, he asked me, he's like, okay, if you see me doing that, I want you to call me out. I'm like, in front of everybody or alone? He goes, no, just call it out. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, that's what I'm like, okay. So we literally had a moment last week. He and his brother were going back and forth. And he went right back into default mode, just
Yeah.
defensive.
Yeah.
And then I'm all king. I'm like, dude, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then he starts coming at me, like, and I'm just like, I'm watching this whole thing play out. And then we actually met yesterday. And I'm like, dude, it's awareness. And like, it's not your default is that. If that's your default, in order to shift anything, you have to be aware, because you know how many times, you know, we're talking about conscious, unconscious decisions. I mean, most of what we do is unconscious anyway. It's programming, and we can rewrite it, but it requires that we have to be aware that we're even doing it, you know? And so, yeah. So it's like, even telling your buddy, it's like anger. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm angry, but like, if your default being angry is to do whatever, you know, then it's like, you're going to go to that, and then you're going to be halfway into whatever that is. But then, oh shoot, here I am.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's almost like the addiction, which is numbing or not facing it, and having that emotional intelligence and recognizing, okay, right now I'm frustrated. The market just dropped and I want to get in on this thing, or understanding I'm in a stressful situation, and having that emotional intelligence to say, take your breath and just be like consciously aware, like you taught your son. I'm in the moment. Because for me, I overthink. My ADD kicks in. I overthink like crazy. And I have to remind myself, okay, I'm just overthinking. Everything's going to be okay. And you'd have to be consciously aware. I think that right there, it goes back to the theme of this, which is authenticity. It's not about being the best. It's just being like knowing who you are and having that conscious awareness of what it is you're going through when you are feeling jealous or you are feeling frustrated, or you lose a deal and you're like, oh, I could just use a whatever. It's being in that moment. Okay, I'm just in a moment. And then take the time to be in the moment. I think sometimes it's okay to be in a moment of sadness. It's okay to be in a moment of frustration. You're still going to feel jealousy, anger, fear, all those things. But it's like knowing you're doing it and just be like, all right, it's just a moment. It's not who I am.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to what I referenced earlier. It's just accepting what is. Yeah. You know, that has been my theme this year for me, is just learning to practice it. So again, it's like, I'm just going to, you know, they'll just say, don't attach, like the law of, just don't attach to anything. And I'm like, okay, but that's easier said than done. And so like this year I've been like, okay, I'm going to actually practice. I'm actually going to try to do this because I want peace. I want inner peace. I don't want to freak out. I don't want to stress about the past. I want to be present. And I had a moment earlier this year where I've been practicing and I'm watching myself move through things so much quicker. And what used to really hinder me, it's like, oh, that was no big deal or whatever. And, you know, we just moved here recently, but our last house we had to move because there was a flood. The basement got flooded, totally ruined the, you know, basement. So I'm getting ready to go. My kids were out of town. My boys were out of town. And I was downstairs. I'm never down there. And I heard a noise in the basement. I never go down there. And I'm like, what was that? And all of a sudden I walked down and I'm like, dark, and I could hear noises. I'm like, what's going on? All of a sudden I'm in 3 feet of water.
Oh geez.
Yeah. There's like it's like a river running through the thing. And of course I'm pissed, freaking out, trying to get it all turned out, finally get the water off. And I'm like, all my furniture's ruined, everything, the whole basement's just torn to pieces. And I go back down in and I'm standing and I'm just pissed. And then it was like, you can't change this. Yeah. It's done. And so I'm literally standing there in 3 feet of water, and literally in the moment, my energy completely shifted. Yes, I was still frustrated, but like this anger of like, it's just like, it's done. Yeah. And then literally being able to move through it. Yeah. It was wild. And then a couple of days later with our insurance trying to cover it, because this, insurance has all these little loopholes, because it was a sprinkler line that broke outside, they considered a flood. We didn't have flood insurance. So then it's like, insurance isn't going to accept it, and someone's like, well, you could say this. I'm like, I'm not lying. I'm going to be integrity. And so it's just like, if it's going to be covered, it's covered. It just is. Yeah. And so to like practice it and stuff that like before I would have just been pissed. And so it's like, it's just like, it just is. And so it's cool. That's, mention breath. I mean, meditation and just sitting in silence. If you can, the universe will move it through you if you just sit in it for a minute. And so I love that you spoke to that. Like breath is one of the greatest tools that we have. Yeah.
It's interesting going through that. And you talked about, you have to practice, right?
Oh no, it's easier said than done.
You have to. And that's, going back to that whole thing of like shooting those free throws, it wasn't about the free throws. It's just practicing something over and over and over to where you're good at it. There's 2 things that we can control. Only 2. And people have challenged me on it. I've gone through it with them. You control your thoughts and you can control your actions. You're driving down I-15. It's raining outside. Cars are everywhere. There's an accident. It's snowing. Whatever it is. Your kids, work, all this stuff. That's considered the no stress zone because you cannot control it. You live in Utah. The weather changes. I mean, it'll be snowing today and sunny tomorrow. And the things you can't control, you think about what are my thoughts towards it and what are my actions. There's an accident. I got to come to Adam's podcast. All I can do is this. I have a choice. I can either turn and go off a different direction, or I call Adam and say I'm not going to make it. I can't be stressed out about it. There's only two things you can do: your thoughts on it and your actions. So going into the pipe bursting downstairs, you come down, you're like, okay, this sucks. And the practice in your brain, okay, basement's flooded. I can't control it. It's already done. The damage is already done. All I can do is control my actions on this thing. So I'm going to get control of it. I can call these guys. I can do the stuff. And now all of a sudden, and it just helps de-stress us mentally and emotionally so we can take proper action. So then our brains aren't, again, lack of blood flow and we're freaking out and cussing out our kids because the basement flooded for no, just stupid things we do out of moments of stress. Things we can't control. And I think that's important, is to recognize what it is we can and can't control.
Yeah. And it's empowering when we can. And I agree with you. I mean, the only thing we control is us, and even though like if the defaults for random thoughts, or actually I want to say this, you just said it takes practice. Yeah. So it's interesting, whatever it happens to be. And this is why I love just working out, physical health, the transformation, because it's the one, there's other things, but it's one thing you cannot cheat. Yeah. You can biohack your body. You can do all these different things. You can go get certain, but at the end of the day, to maintain a healthy lifestyle is earned. You can't, 350-pound Adam can't walk into the gym, one workout and come out shredded.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It takes time. It's discipline. It's consistency. Like your son, the fact that he hit 100 out of 105, he's put a lot of time and practice into that. And when it comes to our mind and our thoughts, again, to break up the default pattern of how we respond to things, which are so layered based off how we're raised and all, society and family and religion and all the different things. So to all of a sudden practice this new level of awareness, or it takes practice. Yeah. We are going to fall back into old patterns. It's expected. I love that you just said, you're like, listen, I'm doing this. This is what works. And then you even said to it, which is true. It's like, and I'm still practicing every day.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, to the audience, I think it's important for all of us to look at what is it that we have been successful at, that we've tried and transitioned. It's a win or learn situation, not win or lose. Because I think the cool thing with sports that I love the most is that sometimes you are going to lose games. You are going to lose track meets or swim meets or whatever your thing is. You're going to lose once in a while, but now think of it as learn. Because I remember, you asked me, the first question you ever asked me is what are you a black belt in? And you pointed right at me. I was like, shoot, I actually am a black belt. So I've been doing martial arts my whole life. My dad owns all these martial arts studios. I'm a 5th degree black belt, and I've been in so many tournaments, right? And I remember going through, and I was fighting this guy, and he was smaller than me, but he was so fast. And I won all my tournaments up until this moment. And I thought I beat this kid, and it was on, goes to the end. And they raised his hand. And for me, my dad's the headmaster, grandmaster, Royal West. And I'm sitting here, first time I ever lost. And I just sat there and I was like, oh. And it lit a fire inside of me so strong, because I'm like, I didn't think I could lose. I thought there's no freaking way. Because I've had all these win cycles. And then I just thought, what can I learn from this thing? And I'm like, I've learned it's okay to not win every single time. You learn more from the losses.
100%.
And I think as we look back at things from business, look how much better and stronger you are now going through your journey, and even going through divorce, going through addictions, going through loss of jobs and stuff like that too, or whatever our situations are. I think if we look at it and think it wasn't a loss, it was a learning experience. Because I even had someone talk to me about starting off their career again. He's like, I'm starting all over. I'm like, no, you're not. You're 50 years old. You now have 50 years of experience life experiences, childhood stuff, all the way through. And you've tapped into your authentic self, hopefully at this point, which I'm assuming general audience watching between that 40 to 60 age. I don't even know how all of it, but on the demographics. But I think at this point in our lives, we're not starting over fresh. We're starting over with all this huge resume of knowledge, experience.
Yeah, what would have taken 20 years to build, you could do in 5.
Right.
Right. And it's like, it's tuition.
Yeah.
And it's when I was going through everything I was going through and losing my company, it was so painful. And one of my coaches still work with at the time, he's just so matter of fact. It's always about me. And he, and I'm a mess, and what felt so cold at the time, he's like, the only thing you're going to get out of this is wisdom. And I was so pissed. I'm like, wisdom? That's it? That's all I'm going to get out of this?
Yeah.
And there's been so much more. But the truth is, like, wisdom, like in empathy. I mean, there's been so many beautiful gifts that have come from this pain. But wisdom, like, wise. What is someone that's wise? When someone says they know something, I believe you can only know something if you've experienced it. Yeah. So the wisdom that someone that's figuring out all these little miscellaneous stuff we can do in our sleep, but there's levels to that. But it's like, when you have the wisdom comes from experience, and it's knowing not only the positives, but the negatives, and the wisdom is really earned in the failures, the setbacks, the quote unquote hard. And that's where you learn. And as men, that's where confidence is forged.
Yeah. I started smiling and laughing a little bit. I think about my early single years. I did not have wisdom in being single.
No, it's
new.
I
was freaking crazy and like a total wreck. Emotionally, mentally, like, just didn't know what I was doing. And now what's interesting is now going through relationships and learning more about myself and having more wisdom is now I sit there and I do exactly what I was just sharing earlier is if my wife says something to me, I'm like, you're right. I can see it from your perspective. And now some of my wisdom has helped me now to journey myself through a different path of coming from a place of strength and confidence and experience, because that wisdom mine. And now it's like you going into the gym or doing this podcast, your wisdom that you have now and the knowledge and experience that you have and practicing it on a regular basis, where how much better you are now than you were even when you first started doing it, right?
But that's the beauty of it. It's experience. You know, coming out of divorce and dating for me post-divorce was so therapeutic, and like, it was fun. I got 20 years of date. I mean, it was fun. There's this new level of confidence, and then you go through the seasons of that. It's like, I'm with this person or whatever. And it's like, I need this, my worth's tied to this, my identity's tied to this or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the more, coming back to authenticity, to be, part of authenticity for me is just really knowing who I am without outside validation or need of someone's approval. That's a very key distinguishing thing for me.
Can you say that again? Do you remember?
Let's see if I can rewrite. No, authenticity is knowing who I am.
Yes.
That's not contingent upon what other people think. Because the cost of authenticity is also rejection. The cost of authenticity is knowing that people are not going to like you. And I think there's still a lot of men, even in the singles world, right? Because part of it, you got to figure things out. And it's okay to figure things out. If you want to go date a ton of people, then go date a ton of people. If you only want to date one, then go date one. Like, everyone has their own different path. But like, just being so sure of who you are as a man, it's just like, nope, I'm saying no to that, no matter what anyone else thinks, or I'm not interested in that. And so for me, just even the more confident that I've gotten in myself, there's been multiple seasons where I was insecure, or multiple things where I'm showing up because I thought that was right, or this, and then just getting so sure. It's like, you know what? Like, I love this and I don't need it because I know who I am.
And and that goes back to the beginning. What I was saying is I was seeking validation here.
Oh, for sure.
Instead of here.
So much of dating is.
Yeah.
So much of dating is.
Well, it really is. I remember someone telling me one time, they said, stop giving credit for someone being good looking. And I said, because you're not going to go date someone that's ugly, right? And I thought that was interesting. They said, give people credit for conflict resolution, like how quick they're able to fix something that's gone astray, how their communication is, how they show up during moments of stress, all the stuff that we're talking about right now, it's like that is the person you want to find, is someone that is authentic, that knows themselves, that are experienced, and they've practiced getting through those experiences over the years to where now they're wise and they're calm. And for me, and I'll transition into this one, for me, that's what gave me the push to go from dating to engaged to married, as I found somebody that is authentic, that is real, that knows themselves so well and doesn't need me, but wants me, and I want them. And obviously we were in love, and it just, for me, it happened so natural and so smooth. But I would say like 3 years ago, I was not ready for that at all.
Same.
I had to go through my experiences to get there.
Yeah. And it's like, and I think one of the hottest things, especially is like, again, looking at, being attracted to women, a woman that is accountable, a woman that can own her shit. One of my litmus tests when I was dating was like, of course, conversations come up. Everybody, one of my things is like, I'm not going to date some, I tried the younger thing. I wouldn't date someone that didn't have kids. So of course, most likely they were in a relationship. So of course, tell me about what's going on. If anyone went out the gates ripping their ex, it's, well, he did this, like that was immediate red flag. And then I'd have fun with it. I'm like, well, what did you do? What did you do?
Yeah.
Because it's like, we all play a role.
Yeah.
Like, to say that it's just, I don't care what's happened. Everybody plays a role. And it's like, when you can own your shit and be a part of it and just like, what, this is how I showed up. This is what I did. And make it all about you. Like, that's a turn on to me. Yeah. And being able to willing to accept, like, and be accountable, which I am finding more and more. And again, I was in that camp for a long time, that it's like, that's actually really hard to do. But to be like, when you can find a man and a woman that are both accountable, because I truly believe that any two people can make magic at all, no matter what's happened, where you're at, as long as both people are willing to look at themselves first and take radical accountability for the role that they play, and then come together, to make agreements and to meet each other's needs, magic can happen.
It's interesting you said that, because I remember, so many conversations. So he cheated on me, or she did this, and they go back to all these things. And I'm like, that is a result of other things that was going on way before that happens. Like, no one just walks out and does something. So a lot of times it's lack of connection and then lack of communication. Yep. And the lack of communication, if you think about the two things we can control, it's our thoughts and our actions. If you're not happy within your relationship, now I've learned to speak up where before I didn't. And I've learned to communicate needs or wants or desires or opportunities that we have, and go through that whole thing, so then it doesn't get to the point where you start holding grudges and resentments and all these things.
Which the resentment's just a projection of your inability to be able to speak the truth. Yes. And I was that same guy, radically insecure, and knowing that I'm going to say something and you could go away, like it. But like you're self-betraying when you can't speak your truth, and you think, even if you're like, well, I don't want conflict, I want to grease the wheels, whatever. But the truth is, you're self-betraying, and it's going to blow up at some point. Yeah. The truth will always set you free. But for men especially, like it's rooted in confidence. Yeah,
it really is in that confidence. Again, it goes back to the shooting the free throws. Yeah. It comes in practice.
100%.
But I think sometimes too is going back to, during my single years, I had my Porsche, and I thought it was cool, and I had my house and all these things. I was playing that role, and it was fake confidence in some ways. If I'm being authentic to myself and real for myself, I was playing the role, and really I was probably a little bit insecure, and I was masking it instead of with drugs or this or that. It was like I was masking it with, look how cool I am.
Yeah.
Look how awesome I am. And like all these things that I have that I think I'm so cool. But really, now I look back and I'm like, it served its purpose, I think, during those years. But it was, again...
But you learn that. You figure that out. And you learn that through just like, again, the awareness. And that's the beauty of this. It's like everybody's on their own timeline and their own path.
Yeah.
Like you and I can look at, with our experience, we can look at, let's say, a dude that's 40 years old getting divorced right now, and we can like, brother, listen, you ready? Like, yes. We've got some advice for you. And if he's not ready to hear it, but the truth is like, go figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, here's some things to consider. Here's an invitation for that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, you're going to figure it out on your own or not.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating, like being single and then in a relationship 4 years, then going back into that world. All of a sudden I'm there and I'm like, it's the same damn people.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, whoa, this is the same. I mean, yes, some new faces, whatever, but like, it's the same crew. You know, and if I was,
gosh,
if
I'm
I happen to be single again next year, I'll probably start. It's like, oh, it's the same crew. Like, you know, it's just fascinating. This perpetual like singleness here, at least here in the state of Utah. It's kind of wild.
It is so hilarious you're saying that. I taught a speed training camp for kids, like racing and running and stuff. And the whole goal on it was to take the drills that they're doing and how can I increase their speed faster and decrease their slowing down. So you can maximize your speed in the heat of it. The whole thing is breaking the learning, like the speed curve, I guess, or the learning curve. So going back to that, someone freshly divorced, like, I'm going to help you so much right now. I've gone through it. I'm going to break this learning curve for you because you're going to go through this phase, this phase, this phase. But again, they have to go through it themselves and
It's
get
how
to
you
it.
know. It's how you know.
Oh my gosh! But
So Brandon, what's in store for you over here? You know, what would you like to share with our listeners? Like, what's next for you over the next 6 to 12 months?
that's a really good question. I appreciate that. Going back to our first conversation, the first thing I said is I want to bless and change people's lives. The times I've been most happy has been when I've been serving others, whether it's been in any role that I've been in, even as a father, even for my family members and things like that, of just being there to constantly love and serve and take care of people. And I do think this is important is when I went through a program, the biggest thing I learned going through this thing, it kind of like stopped with like all the bad habits that I was doing. So he said the 2 great commandments, like love thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. The whole key is yourself. And so we need to like love ourselves. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is to start with self-care, whether it's working out or it's to stop drinking or calming it down, like attend a church or tap into spiritual things. I had a friend of mine reach out to me and he goes, randomly, and I only met him like once or twice, and he reaches out to me on social media and says, thank you for liking all the cool posts. They're like the spiritual ones and just authentic ones and things that just tap into the soul and empathy. And he goes, thank you. And he goes, I've been going through a lot of stuff. And he goes, and I see all this. And then I looked at your Instagram pages and see you with your kids and all these things. And he goes, it's like how I want to live my life. And I thought that was really cool. So for me, like that moment is, what are we doing when the cameras are shut off? What are we doing when no one's looking? I've been tempted many, many times to give into substances a lot. And when they say like the natural man's an enemy to God, I go back to my college days and I was sitting there in it, doing it, but I moved out here to fix that, to like change and find out who I really am. And I think more than anything, I think being on this podcast with you, Adam, and like watching what you're doing, I want everything to do with that, to go bless and change people's lives, because you're doing it on a daily basis. Your messages, the things we say, the things we do. And instead of, and I'm like so caught up in emotion of this whole thing of like what we've been talking about, instead of labeling ourselves and putting all of our emotions and energy onto like a politician or something else, it's like share our message of who we are. Because it's easy to attach ourselves to other people, and I mean, we all do it. But for me, I guess my message would be to be a better parent every day, be a better sibling, a better uncle, a better friend. And my son talked to me, my oldest son, Tyler, talked to me about that. He goes, how am I showing up as a son to you and as a brother to my brother and sister, and as a cousin, and all these things, and his beautiful wife. And I think that's a good question for all of us to ask, is how are we showing up? What is it we're doing in our lives to show up, again, in front of the camera and off camera?
Yeah, I appreciate sharing that. That's a, I think the greatest spiritual connection we have, to God, the universe, whatever you believe, or with anybody, is rooted in personal integrity. And a big thing for me, of me being authentic, right, is here I am on camera, on the audio. Who's Adam when the mic's turned off and the camera's turned off? And am very intentional that, if you were to walk into my bedroom at 3 a.m. in the night, you're not going to see me doing something that I'm not publicly. It's like I want to be real, because there's what is real these days, like politics, things. What is even real? Like, it's kind of fascinating, and it's just, again, coming back to what we kind of started with, is being authentic. It's like, again, it's like being integrous, authenticity, confidence. It's like, it's being so grounded that your core values, hopefully you know what those are, and it's like, if your core values, that anything that's rooted in that is a hell yes. If it's not, it's a hell no. Then it's not a core value. And you said something that, kind of as we finish up here, I want to say, that I don't know the number of the commandments, but, love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah.
It's something for all of us to think about, is the way you talk about, or with people that you love, how's your self inner dialogue? So in some ways, the truth is maybe that actually was inadvertently reversed, that like, love yourself as you love others.
Yes.
Because, the negative self-talk or the self-belief, and I've done enough work that that side of me is basically gone. But like, for most of my life, the way I would talk to myself, I wouldn't talk to my worst enemy the way I did that, So it's like, and if you happen to be a man that looks in the mirror and like has this, like, we need to talk, because like you can work through that. You can change the story, but there's just so many silent battles that it's the chaos and the voice in our head. And again, you're right. But you said something so important. It's like, we can actually control that, even though we feel like we can't.
It's interesting going back to the things, this whole theme, which I love, authenticity and practice, and for as a man thinketh type thing. On my glass shower, I write confident, I write success, I write, all these affirmations on a daily basis, all the time. Ton of self-talk. On the way here, I called my friend Toscano, and I was like, Mike, I'm going on Adam's podcast. I'm like, fill my brain full of good stuff. And first thing interesting, he talked about authenticity. He goes, I sell cars. He goes, but I'm authentic in the way of my approach. And he goes, I just happen to sell cars. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, but it's staying there. And so it is that constant practice and constant way of like self-reassurance all the time. I got this. I'm good. I'm strong and confident. Self-talk is the biggest thing. I've gone to therapy for so long, and it's helped me a ton. During a lot of that's her biggest thing that I got out of it, was self-talk. So positive, because going back to the basketball stuff, you wouldn't be like, gosh dang it, I missed that shot, and just get frustrated, because you wouldn't say that to your teammate. How could you be so stupid? But you'd say it to yourself.
Yep.
So you can't do that. And I think it takes practice. Is finishing the podcast right now, I could be done and driving home and be like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Why did I do this? And I shouldn't turn my, overthink it. And instead I go like, that was good. It's going to bless someone's life. It's going to change someone's life. It's going to adapt the way that they are currently living their life. And maybe if it reaches out to one person, it's the whole reason you're doing this. Because you've made money, you've lost money, you've had success, and so have I. We've gone through this, and I'm like, what's the most important thing? It is finding ourselves and helping others.
Yeah, I love that, brother. And is this a good? I mean, this has been phenomenal. I love this conversation. You and I could talk for hours. And in the show notes, I'll put links to Brandon's social media. Give him a follow. You can see why I wanted to have a conversation with him here. And just again, whatever you're going through, whatever you're at, like, trust me, like, no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging, like, listen, you can get through it. Like, and that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is really, it's like the burn up, the man in the flames, right? The flames are actually there to help elevate it. It's like a phoenix rising, and it's all for our good. And as we both have shared today, like, we've been through a lot of shit and experienced a lot of different things, but the reality is they've all been gifts. And know that whatever season you're in, it's temporary, it will pass, and you have a choice, and discipline, and being authentic, and finding that confidence, and it's moving through the flames, and the uncomfortableness is where you're going to find your confidence. So anyway, Brandon, thank you very much for being with me today.
Adam, thank you so much, man. You are blessing and changing people's lives every day, and I love it.
I appreciate it, brother. And thank you to everyone that's listening and watching. We'll see you next time on the Burn Up Podcast.